think that's a great point. As you mentioned, India is the only country that has really fought with China. The United States has not done that. So there is really a lot of things the U.S. should be learning from India about how to deal with this common enemy, as you say, China. But it sounds like there's just tremendous challenges blocking any meaningful relationship between the U.S. and India in regards to China because of all these other issues.
The Department of Defense in the United States is getting on much better with India than, if I may say so, the State Department and the White House. I think Lloyd Austin is a military guy. He understands the situation very well, and it's definitely not enough. In India, also, like in Taiwan, we are asked to pay top dollar for every single bullet, for every single piece of paper or pencil that we buy from Washington. And at the same time, we in Asia are watching a country get flooded with weapons free of cost. Every day, Biden, Mrs. Biden, somebody in the Biden White House, some other leading politicians, oh my God, you have to give more to Ukraine, hundreds of billions of dollars more. For God's sake, nobody talks about giving hundreds of thousands of dollars to a country that is actually on the front line with China. Why? Because you have gone back to a trap of being obsessed with a dead Cold War with Russia. And as a consequence, Russia and China has now made Russia a subsidiary power for the time being. And this is the great effect of this situation. Now, Ukraine. I mean, I've talked to my Western friends. If you check my writing from day one, I was very clear. The Ukrainians will be smart. I thought Zelensky would be smart enough to say, look, about 1/5 of our country is now occupied by Russia, de facto, through its proxies. For God's sake, we're not going to be able to fight and get that back in a hurry. Maybe someday the Russian Federation will collapse, and then we'll try. But I never expected them to really believe that they have a military chance of getting it back. And and unfortunately, Putin also believed that they want to try and get it back with the help of the West. I don't know if that's what people in the West were planning. I don't know, frankly, if anybody have been planning that. But unfortunately, a chap called Vladimir Putin believed that and thought he better move into the occupied parts of Ukraine before the Ukrainian army moves in. And he did so. Well, that's fine. But the fact is, fine means, from the point of view, all that has happened. It's an aggression, it's an invasion, it's a war. It should not have happened. But the reality is, you have taken your eye completely off the ball. It's almost as though Joe Biden was waiting for a trigger to go back to the Cold War he is so comfortable with. The Cold War that he has really lived his life in, as being a senator, as and Obama tried a little bit of a refit, it didn't work out. And Biden was, frankly, he has gone back to this default option of Russia. And today, what are you seeing? You're seeing a procession of VIPs land up in China, essentially begging China to ensure that the Russians stop in Ukraine, when the Chinese are the biggest gainers from this. And what happens in the Western world, you have a lot of lawyers. They like the written word. You have a lot of politicians. They love the spoken word. So what happens? The Chinese toss little tidbits in the way of the West. One recent tidbit was one UNGA resolution. Tremendous excitement in Europe and America, actually talking about Russian aggression in the some kind of a preamble to a resolution that is supported, by the way, by India also, by China. Now that's, for God's sake, a UNGA resolution means nothing. A preamble means even less. So that little tidbit is enough for the very large group of pro-China people in the United States, including in your social media platforms, let me add, including in your media, including in different political parties and in positions of power, to jump on this and say, look, Xi Jinping is with us. He's actually said Russia is committing aggression. Why? By being one of some 100 and odd countries that have signed on to a declaration by the UNGA, which frankly, in terms of practical effect, is not worth the paper it's published on. So let's be honest, in Asia, we are dismayed by the shift of focus of effective US support back to Europe and away from Asia. And very importantly, the US believing that the Taiwanese are essentially a people who are, fairly simple minded people. They're not very advanced. So you have a large number of visitors going there. Everybody who goes there does a lot of chest thumping. You have Nancy Pelosi, and now you have, of course, the speaker. Fortunately, met him in California. Look, Taiwan is not helped one bit by any of these visits and the brave words that are uttered there, mostly for political theater back home. They want practical stuff. They want advanced weaponry. They want a clear outline of sanctions. They've already been aggressed. What are the sanctions? Who are the Chinese generals and Chinese policymakers, CCP, who have been sanctioned? Can you name a soldier in the PLA who's been sanctioned? Of course not. It's definitely not. You can't because there isn't any. So they're looking at hard reality, and the Americans are thinking, like they thought in so many countries in Asia, Africa, Latin America, honeyed words are what we need. So a lot of honeyed language. We have also got that honeyed language, but in our private conversations, we've made it very clear honey is fine, but honey doesn't win a war. And all I can say, so far as the Biden administration is concerned, Trump was concerned, Biden is about the same as Trump. We're getting about one third the paid for help that we need to fight China. I must confess, we're getting about 70% of the intelligence that we are getting to fight China. During Trump's time, we got 90%. Now it's about 70%. We are getting overall assistance of that kind, which is all that we want. We don't want your soldiers. We want your advanced weaponry. We're not getting it. We are a poor country. We can't afford to buy it in the quantities needed to secure our border. We can't afford it. And the Taiwanese, frankly, can afford it, but they are griping about the fact that you're saying that Taiwan is a front line of democracy. And what are you doing? You're not even, you're getting top dollar out of the front line of democracy. You want some, security of the US is linked to Taiwan, and you make them pay for it. And you don't give them advanced weaponry. And frankly, a lot of intel as well. You're sharing intel, but not enough. I think if Trump had been, I don't like Donald Trump, frankly. I was happy that he was defeated. I was glad initially that Biden came, but I'm told the intel reaching Taiwan today is nowhere what it was beginning to under Donald Trump. It was accelerating under Donald Trump. It's now decelerating under a White House that seems to believe that China holds the key to the future of the United States and, of course, the Ukraine conflict. That's what we think in Asia. And may I say that this Ukraine conflict and the complete attention, the complete flow of non paid for resources, the complete domination of the media by a country which, frankly, was part of the Soviet Union for a long time, and that from 2014 onwards, those parts that Russia is claiming have been under Russian control, effective Russian control. I don't think the West has been critically wounded in that. And then you hear Biden and you hear Rishi Sunak, before him Johnson, you hear Ursula von der Leyen, you see the Scholz. Oh my God, Ukraine is the center of Western civilization. If Ukraine falls, Europe falls apart. Western civilization falls apart. Then where were you from 2014 to 2022 when that part of Ukraine was cut away? In effect, I mean, this nonsense about Ukraine being central to Western security is meaningless unless you're talking of a land invasion of Russia, which I don't believe anybody in NATO or the West will be talking about. So I want to say you're wrong about that. We have had more military drills with the United States than with all other countries combined, in my reckoning. And there's a small little research group that I'm there. More military drills in the United States, more, if I may say so, joint activity on mountain warfare, naval operations, and all that. But a lot of that is DoD focused, and the DoD is, I think, awake to the need for India. But the DoD also seems to be on the same page. There's no real Cold War 2.0. It's still Cold War 1.0. It's still Russia. That's the big bad wolf at the door. Frankly, the Russians are nothing compared to the dragon that's now at the door.